to bring in more angles of this discussion here. We're honored to be joined right now by Dr. Michael Oren, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, coming to us from Washington. I have to bring up, I think, Dr. Oren, what I refer to here as the Trump factor. Okay, President Trump versus President Biden on this deal, really both taking credit in some ways, both likely deserving some credit. But is this a display, the fact that this is happening already, of the real world power of the incoming President Trump?
Well, first, let me say good to be with you, and that I share in the joy of the families of Doron, Emily, and Romi, and the reuniting with those families, and we hope for their health, their recovery, et cetera. It's a very profound moment for the people of Israel. There's no way we can say this, and for the families of those who are not being repatriated with their loved ones who remain in captivity in Gaza. Our hearts are with them, and our hearts are with the many dozens and dozens of Israelis' families whose loved ones were killed by terrorists who are getting out of prison today. We forget about that. Right. That is, many of them are devastated. I know some of them personally, and they don't know how they can get past this. They feel they've been betrayed by the state. And yes, there's much credit to both the Biden administration and the incoming Trump administration. I'm here at the inauguration ceremonies today. I'm part of the presidential delegation here, and we're participating in all the festivities. What a contrast. You talk about the contrast between Gaza and Israel at this moment, but what a contrast with Washington. Certainly both presidents are owed a tremendous amount of thanks for this moment. But let's put this in perspective. A couple of weeks ago, it was President Trump who said that all hell would break loose unless the hostages were released. And many people in Israel felt that that was directed at Hamas, but it turned out it was directed at least as much as Israel itself. And the president's special emissary, Steve Witkoff, cooperated very closely with his Democratic counterpart, Brett McGurk. They developed a personal friendship, and they put tremendous pressure on both sides to agree to a position that was very similar to that which had been agreed out between the Biden administration and the Netanyahu government last May, but which Hamas had refused very central components of that deal. And so Israel has been moved to this moment. Big question is, what happens from this point on? Phase one, and then I have good reason to believe that phase one will proceed. Hamas has never kept a ceasefire. Didn't keep the ceasefire of October 7th, 2023. Didn't keep the ceasefire of November 2023. What happens when Hamas doesn't keep the ceasefire? Or say more problematically, what if several rockets fall on Sderot, or there's an ambush of an Israeli patrol, Israeli soldiers are killed, and Hamas says, well, it's not our people. We had nothing to do with it. Will Israel then get the green light to go and resume hostilities? And what will happen internally to the state of Israel if hostages remain in captivity when this ceasefire breaks down? So many questions. And the assumption, certainly on the Israeli side, has been, according to press reports, that there's an understanding with the Trump administration that there's full support for Israel to resume hostilities against Hamas. Should the ceasefire break down. There may be even a broader deal that relates to Lebanon and hopefully also Iran. We don't know. I certainly don't know. It all comes under the rubric of hope. But looking at these pictures, I can just say, as a citizen of Israel, of someone who represents Israel abroad, I'm looking at the great solemnity on our side and the celebration on the Hamas side, and I'm reminded that this is a conflict that's far from over. And that these people we see dancing in the street of Gaza are not our prospective peace partners at all. They are our present and, as far as I can see, future enemies.
Look, on a philosophical level here, in terms of the U.S.-Israeli defense model here, a lot was tested. A lot, underwent a lot of strain over the last year plus of conflict now. There were a lot who argued that it became apparent that the Pentagon had just too short a leash on Israel, so to say. That when it comes to munitions and our ability to operate here freely, do you think there are going to be major efforts on the Israeli side to become a more independent actor, or is it looked at as a different administration coming in under Trump? What's from the Israeli side, how things move forward?
I know how things must move forward, and I don't want to blow my own horn too much, but as a member of the Israeli government back in 2016, I opposed what was known as the Obama Memorandum of Understanding. Right. That's the 10-year, $40 billion aid package. And one of the reasons I opposed it was that in 2014, during the fighting in Gaza then, Protective Edge, Obama withheld certain central very essential forms of munitions from Israel on the claim that we had killed too many Palestinians. And already in 2016, I said, well, this is going to be a problem. If we get into a bigger conflict, we could find ourselves in a much more trying situation vis-a-vis the United States, and that we have to be munition independent, particularly in the field of artillery and tank shells. And I think Israelis now agree that this is an untenable situation, a very dangerous situation for the state of Israel. We can never be entirely munition-free. Our jets, for example, and our tanks are made of many, many thousands of components, and not Israel can't produce all of them. We've seen how the British, the Canadians, have followed suit by boycotting certain components which are very essential to us. And there may even be legal measures I've heard about here in Washington against the British and Canadian governments for boycotting, as illegal boycotts against the state of Israel during wartime. But I hope that plays out. But in any case, we have to be munition independent to the greatest degree possible. The United States will always be our ultimate ally. And I do believe that in Donald Trump, we have a genuine friend in the White House, certainly the people he has appointed, from Secretary of State Rubio, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and Ambassador to the United Nations, Elise Stefanik. I know all these people personally. They are profoundly pro-Israel. And they carry out policy. They don't make policy. They can influence policy. We have, from our perspective, a dream team. But that doesn't mean there can't be disagreements. And here was a case, I think, based on press reports, where the president's emissary said to Mr. Netanyahu, you have to take this deal. The president wants this deal before January 20th, before the inauguration. And that put pressure on Netanyahu. I don't know if he would have reached the deal had he not been pressured in that way. And that type of relationship could extend to additional measures related to the peace process, perhaps the revival of the deal of the century. And I was privileged to be an advisor on that. And or perhaps even negotiations between the United States and Iran.
Certainly major developments coming our way down the road here. Dr. Michael Oren, thanks for being with us. Your insight truly valued here. A big day in Israel. Thanks for joining the broadcast.